A lot of AAA games today suck ass, so companies just remake their old games instead. I think what's happening with AAA games is that, well, apart from the political bullshit, the woke, blah blah blah, I think what's happening is that I've been saying, and I've said this before about Square Enix. I've used Square Enix as an example of how they don't seem to have original ideas anymore, or either because they don't have them, or because they do, but they feel like they're not gonna work. So I think what's happening with AAA games is that almost every single one of them is trying to imitate other successful genres or other successful AAA games from before. Like The Witcher 3 came out, it was a massive success and everybody followed. Final Fantasy 16, that was pretty much a love letter to The Witcher 3 in my opinion. And then in Grand Theft Auto, right? And then off they go to create multiple clones of those. And then there's, well, you name it, Devil May Cry, God of War. You know, it's always, this is something that's been happening for decades, okay? But it feels more overly present nowadays, like there's less creativity for AAA video games of any genre than before. Because I feel like before, companies were still trying to take risks. Why? Because they weren't making that much money anyway. But nowadays, you know, games are selling millions. Like, weren't we talking about several streams ago that Grand Blue Fantasy Relink sold over 1 million copies in just a few weeks? 10, 20 years ago, that would never have happened, man. That could have happened for a Squaresoft or Square Enix title, maybe Bandai Namco. But Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, had it been released 10 years ago, no way in hell would it have sold 1 million copies in just 2 weeks, man. And nowadays they do. So I guess I'm trying to say that companies are starting to get greedier. Like they care way more about making money than making something original. At least some AAA companies are still trying to... okay, they leave creativity and originality aside, but they put a lot of quality. Some companies, okay, not all of them. If you start mentioning games like Fallout or... what was the name? 76? Or the original release of Cyberpunk, you know, I know that. So that's another problem, okay? But I feel like AAA companies, a lot of them are trying to deliver this product that's completely unoriginal, not creative, a complete freaking shameless ripoff, but a really good quality one. So they're focusing more on quality and graphics and politics, sadly, than in something creative or original. But that's just AAA companies, okay? I don't understand why there's a lot of... well, I guess I kind of do understand why there's a lot of concern about AAA games. A lot of you play those games. Hell, I do too, right? But, man, you shouldn't focus that much on that because there's still a lot of AA games and indies and maybe low-budget games are still hoarding the video game industry with creativity and originality. Okay? Or maybe they're trying to bring back some old ideas that weren't that ripped off back in the day, like Unicorn Overlord. In the last Q&A, somebody asked me, how many games are there like Unicorn Overlord? And I was like, oh yeah, Ogre Battle, Grow Lancer, Soul Nomad. And I couldn't think of anything else, and I still can't. So, even though Unicorn Overlord is pretty much inspired by Ogre Battle, you know, it's its own game. And look at the battle interface, you know, in Ogre Battle it was different, and here it's like in 2D Vanillaware style, so... Yes, games like Unicorn Overlord are using an idea that's been done before, but they're trying to be as original and creative as they can. In my opinion, they fucking nailed it. So if you start giving the same importance you do to AAA games, to games like Unicorn Overlord, or any other... I know a lot of you are not into strategy RPG, but that was just a random example. You know, I can use other examples, you know. And then you focus on that and you're like, oh, there's still a lot of creativity and originality. It's just most AAA studios don't give a shit about that anymore. All they care about is being inclusive and being accepted by the minorities, pleasing the minorities, but also pleasing the graphic snobs out there in the world that care way more about graphics than anything else. And as long as their games work properly, like Final Fantasy 16, for example, I'm not gonna lie, the combat, the hack and slash, the controls were fucking awesome, right? So at least they made sure to, if you're gonna rip something off, do it right. The end. Is that a good thing? Though, is that like, should AAA developers continue like this? No, not in my opinion. But I don't think that's gonna change. I don't think AAA companies give a fuck about creativity or originality anymore. And apparently YouTubers are the same. Or movies. Or, damn, the entire entertainment industry, in my opinion. Indie games have so much woke shit in them. Yeah, but that's true. But the thing about indie games is that there's a lot of them, right? There's a lot to choose from. It's not like they're overwhelming you like AAA games. Like, it's really hard to see nowadays a AAA game without that. It's so hard, man. Even the AA games are like that too, right? But indies, you can still find a crap ton of them that leave politics aside and they just focus on telling a good story and creating original battle mechanics or, okay, classic traditional gameplay mechanics, but done right. It's hard to find the really, really good ones though, but I made a video about that called Super Obscure RPG Gems. It was kind of focused on indie RPGs. It was also another failure of a video, but it's there in case you want to watch it. I don't think a lot of people care about indie RPGs, sadly. And we talked about this before on how one of the biggest problems with indie RPGs is that the market is just too saturated right now, right? I mean, it was a sensation like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, it was like a sensation, right? They started gaining more popularity over the years, but it eventually exploded. And not only do we have nowadays a crap ton of indie RPGs, but also a crap ton of indie games, a crap ton of AAA games, a crap ton of video games of all genres. It's just a video game saturation, man, all over the planet. So, yeah. But in my opinion, you should care about indie RPGs a little bit more. Do you think that Shin Megami Tensei fits the dark fantasy genre? Because some people consider it to be this way while others don't. It's okay. So dark fantasy is like a pretty open concept. Okay, when most people think of dark fantasy, the first thing that comes to mind is like medieval fantasy with vampires and demons and monsters that look like creepy as hell and stuff like that. Okay, like supernatural. And I get it, right? But the setting is what matters most to them. Like, what's dark fantasy? Oh, medieval. So I'm of the mentality that dark fantasy can be modern and also can be like science fiction and futuristic, because it's still dark fantasy. Some of my books are dark fantasy and they're not medieval, right? I have a book called The Reaper's Thorn. Well, it's kind of like on the 19th century, so I guess it's still dark fantasy. But I have a book called Morgana Code. The dark fantasy is not its focus, but it has elements. So to answer your question, is Shin Megami Tensei dark fantasy? I think it is. And but it's not really the focus of it. But then again, play a game like The Witcher 3, which is a dark fantasy setting. But the focus of The Witcher 3 is not really that. They focus a little bit more on other stuff, you know. But it's still it's still considered as a dark fantasy setting. So Shin Megami Tensei, yes, I'll say it is. They're dark. They're kind of gothic, some of them. And there's I mean, the fact that your character summons demons and creatures and creepy monsters and vampires and stuff like that, you know, and supernatural. I mean, isn't that the definition of dark fantasy? It's still fantasy, but it's dark. So yeah, I will consider the Shin Megami Tensei series as dark fantasy, but I can see why people don't. And it's probably because of what I explained to you, because dark fantasy is usually used for medieval looking settings and scenarios. Fear and Hunger is the best indie RPG. I know that game is probably never going to be released on consoles because of the type of game it is, but man, I'd love to play it. But if you guys watched my Eiyuden Chronicle preview review, you noticed. Now you know, I've been saying this for years and I've been explaining why I don't play on Steam and why I don't cover Steam games. You know that, but now you saw that. If you haven't watched the video, go and watch it. My Eiyuden Chronicle, I got a beta version. There's no demo to the public, okay? This beta version was just for reviewers. And I got one, and you saw me capturing footage. I mean, you saw the gameplay footage that I captured directly from Steam with my computer. And I mean, there's a frame rate issues because of my computer. The game's not like that, okay? I needed to clarify that because I don't want people to think the game has bugs and it doesn't. The game runs perfectly. It was just my shitty computer. But now you know why I don't cover Steam games. And now you know why I'll probably never play Fear and Hunger until I get a better computer. And that's not gonna happen this year. I have other things, financial things to take care of. How do you feel about the rise of Chinese RPGs like Black Myth Wukong and other upcoming games from China? I haven't played that one, but I have played some Chinese RPGs like the Shan Yuan Sword games, Banner of the Maid, that was Chinese, Sword of the Vagrant, even though that was indie. I like the fact that more countries are getting into the RPG market, because for decades it's always been mostly USA, United States of America, Canada, and Japan. And maybe the occasional Korean game that gets localized. Some European games, right? But now with the rise of indie RPGs, there's like RPGs of freaking from countries that we didn't even know existed. There's this country from there's this game from this country called whatever, and you're like, I didn't know there was a country with. So yeah, and that I think it's a good thing, but it's China. And everybody and their mom has been worried about China for years, for obvious reasons that even little kids know nowadays. So, I don't know, but we can't judge the developers because of their country of origin, right? And I'd rather focus on the actual RPGs, not the free-to-play games. I know Genshin Impact is from China, Honkai Rail Star is also a free-to-play massive game from China. I don't care about those games. But if we focus on the games like I don't know the game you mentioned. I don't know that kind of game. But the ones that I mentioned that are like actual games, not free to play. You know, you pay for them and you get the full game. I think that's a good thing, but not because they're from China, but because they're from somewhere else that is not Japan. So I hope more countries can start offering RPGs. You know, I'd love to play more Mexican RPGs. I know there's been a few. I know one called Another Crusade, but I didn't play it. I only played the demo again on Steam like 2 years ago, and my computer barely ran it properly. I remember it kept crashing because, you know, it's just this computer can't handle video gaming. I can emulate Game Boy Advance, man, but even Nintendo DS emulator crashes every now and then, and the music fucks out. So my computer's pretty good for some things, but not for gaming, apparently. But that's just me. So yeah, I'm happy that there's been more and more RPGs from all over the world, because we get to see like different stories and different perspectives other than the usual cliches from Japan and the USA or Canada. There's still a part of me that hopes Steamboat Chronicles makes a comeback. Oh yeah, there were only two games, right? PS2 and PSP. The PS2 game was a pretty unique game. I remember well, it's kind of weird. I don't think Steamboat Chronicles is for everybody. There's some things about it that a lot of people are gonna say like, what the hell is this, right? But I think it's a very unique game. Certainly one of the most unique RPGs of its time. It's just pretty unique, right? And then there was the PSP title, which was more quest driven than anything. It's okay at best. It's not a bad game, but it's not great either. It's good. Why Monolith Soft isn't with Sony anymore? Okay, because Tetsuya Takahashi is a person that doesn't like it when companies intervene that much in his creative process. Okay, which is exactly the reason why he first left Squaresoft and then he left Bandai Namco. And now he's with Nintendo, so apparently Nintendo gives him more creative control and he likes that, so that's why. That's my answer to you, man, but Monolith Soft was never with Sony to begin with. Favorite non-humanoid character? Wait a second. Favorite non-human character? Aegis, Persona 3. But non-humanoid, she is a humanoid, so she doesn't count? Is that what you're asking? You mean like favorite, like a dog, like an animal, right? Oh man, Koromaru, Persona 3. Shiro, Suikoden 2. Oh man. Blanca, Shadow Hearts, Covenant. One of my favorites. Right, just pick 3 dogs. I need to diversify, so I don't offend cats. Man, all the other animals in the planet are gonna get offended because I'm not being inclusive. Red 13, yeah. I'll tell you something about Red 13. When I first played Final Fantasy VII, the original game, and that guy joined the party, it blew my fucking mind. That was one of the first times I saw an RPG with a party member that wasn't human, right? So he joined, I was like, oh my god, yeah. But I'll be completely honest with you, I think it's a bit of a boring character. He doesn't get like a really good development, and most of the time he's just kinda there, to be honest. His little arc is pretty interesting about his tribe and shit. I love the character, don't take me wrong, but he was just kinda boring to me. No, Cornelius from Odin Sphere, I guess it doesn't count because he's a humanoid. Humanoid as he has the fur and the coat and the head of a monster, of an animal, but he still has like legs and arms and moves like a human, fights like a human. Okay, Peter, I guess Peter, that's what he was trying to ask. Right? Kimari, that's pretty much a humanoid. He gets pretty good development in Rebirth. Yeah, I figured. Everybody's telling me that the Rebirth saved the day for some characters and gave them more background and development and blah blah blah. Yeah. Yup, I like Muggles myself. See? So yeah, well, Muggles are awesome. That guy from Final Fantasy VI. Man, I think Final Fantasy VI is the only game in the series where an actual Muggle is a party member. Right? I mean, is there another one? I mean, Muggles are always there. Right? But I can't... There's... Maybe in a spin-off, there's gotta be a spin-off where a Muggle is a party member, but in the mainline Final Fantasy series, there's just that guy from Final Fantasy VI. Huh. It's like Doggy from the Ys series. He's been there on almost every single Ys game, but he's only a playable character in Ys 7. Which do you prefer, the Chrono Trigger designs or the Cross character designs? You know, Chrono Cross, you know me. It's my favorite game of all time. But I think I prefer the Akira Toriyama character design. Like in 2D, right? Not the models. Because in Chrono Trigger, we got these sprites. And in Chrono Cross, we got these 3D models. So it's something different. But in terms of art style, you know, I like Akira Toriyama's art style a little bit more. Maybe because I grew up with Dragon Ball. Probably because of that. I find the art style pretty and attractive, you know. Anyway, so yeah, that's my answer. As much as I love Cross, I gotta give the character design in terms of art style to Chrono Trigger. Rest in peace, Akira Toriyama. I still can't fucking believe he's gone.